Thanks for joining me, David Green, and another episode of What Are You Selling? Today with me, I have the great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jeffrey Kippel, the author of The Ridiculous Adventures of Serbinand. It's a blend of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Monty Python, Family Guy, with a little bit of Star Wars thrown in. Jeffrey, thanks for joining me. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Excellent. So before we kind of talk about, like, you kind of tell all the listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself, that is quite a heady mix of influences for The Ridiculous Adventures of Serbinand, which is also a fantastic title for a book.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, the influences, extended to a lot of British comedy. Even though I'm here in Canada, it was, yes, Monty Python and Fawlty Towers and On the Buses and Benny Hill and Steve Allen. So they formed, part of my influences and actually got me interested in Hitchhikers. Right. And, when I read Hitchhikers and saw or recognized that a book could actually make you laugh and laugh out loud, I was like, okay, it's kind of like watching these comedy skits of Monty Python, but in a book format. Okay, cool. So yeah, those were my main influences.
Excellent. And for everyone who's watching at home or listening on the podcast, if you would just hit subscribe if you haven't before, or just give us a follow. And all of Jeffrey's information, his website where you can get his book and all that other stuff will be in the show notes as well. So please do check that out. Yeah, it's funny how many Canadians I come across that talk about British comedy as a real touchstone for them, and because you people are so nice, you're always kind of like, we're not British, but we kind of like it. Like, I think you're kind of honorary Brits. You're like the nice Brits, the actual Brits are like the evil ones, the history's villains, basically. That with comedy every so often, but like the Canadians are like the nice versions of us.
Well, what's cool with a lot of British comedy is it's subtle if it needs to be, and it's directly in your face. So if you're not able to hear that message, you're going to pass over it, or it's going to be so blatant. So that's really cool, and it's unique. And I think that's why there's so many people, at least out here, that have that connection to the UK, who also, appreciate that kind of comedy.
But we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, we have your book, and we have you're the ambassador of RethinkFIT as well, which we want to kind of touch on a little bit. So why don't you tell us, a little bit about how you kind of got around to doing this? We know your influences, but where did the Ridiculous Adventures of Serbinand, where did that little idea come from?
It came from after I read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. I wanted that fun adventure to continue. And it was done. So I said, I'm just gonna write my own. And I would write it, and when I would think of the ideas, I would laugh. When I would write it down, I would laugh. When I read it out loud, I'd laugh again. And then when my friends laughed too, I thought, okay, there's something here to do. And that started when I was in my teens. And I would come back to it every so often throughout my life, or I would go back and read it when I needed a pick-me-up. And it was in 2020 that it got completed. My wife challenged me and said, do a passion project that you've always wanted to do and wanted to complete, and actually complete it. And there's this really amazing feeling of taking something to its completion, like writing it, getting it edited, making a book cover, making an audio book, doing all those things. It was very cool. The unique thing of finishing at this time in my life meant that my life journey and messages and things that I've had as lived experiences got to be embedded, which allowed to even have empowerment messages and self-discovery. So that's how it ties into my other part of my life when you were talking about being an ambassador for RethinkFIT.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about that? I mean, that's a natural place to talk about it. So, I saw you told me a little bit about it in the email. It sounds fascinating, and obviously the messages from RethinkFIT are in the Ridiculous Adventures of Serbinand as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do with that?
Okay, thank you. My background in the fitness and wellness industry started over 2 decades ago, where my wife and I helped to launch and pioneer what's known as the natural bodybuilding movement and events as fitness model search. So we did events and expos and television shows and magazine productions all around the world. And we came to a realization that there was so much focus put on the outward appearance of the body that people forgot about the inner part. So we put a pause and said, we want to empower the industry in the right way, but we ourselves need to connect with mentors and coaches and people from all disciplines to be able to put a proper message. And that message is really to share with people that being fit is beyond just strength and appearance. It's about mental and emotional and social and functional and financial and spiritual health too. And even as it relates to creativity is like one of the key points where you can let your mind switch out of the thinking mode and just go into that beautiful creative flow. It's all about being fit. It's being fit in every aspect of what you're doing. And if people can get into that state, incredible things could happen. All the people who have that story in them or have that message or innovation, that's where it comes out. So it's a nice synergy. And what we do with this is I coach and mentor people who want to empower other people. And so that way the message is reached further. And we also do that by way of running retreats and events and workshops that take place all over the world. Everything from writing retreats to art to, mental and emotional health and support.
Right. I mean, that is such an important thing, the core of what you said there about how the focus was always so much on the interior and not the exterior. It's quite refreshing to hear that, because especially from what we've all been through in the world in the last nearly 2 years, the interior health is so important, and having that kind of fortitude of strength helps you get through the kind of things that we've been through lately.
Absolutely. It's mindset. It's being able, the one of the positives that have happened over this period is in most cases, people had a chance to pause. And in that moment of pause, there's reflection and people rethinking the way that they're actually living their life. So it's what people do with the circumstances around them.
So tell me, how does that feed into your book? So you said that you have those messages throughout. So obviously no spoilers, because we don't want to tip everyone off. How does that feed into it?
It feeds into it in a number of ways. So being a science fiction based book, or I would say it's more comedy than science fiction, but the science fiction aspect of it, the science I chose is the metaphysical, quantum physics, that whole notion that the power of thought can create really cool things. And through that experience, if you get yourself into a present moment, then really cool things happen. So without spoiling, as you're saying in the book, there are two main characters. That one is from the planet Paselner, out somewhere in space, and one is from here on Earth. And they switch places, so to speak. So they're both being able to see things in each other's world from a childlike playfulness and new awareness type feel. So that makes it interesting. So it allows for self-growth and self-discovery messages.
And obviously it gives you a good scope for humor as well, comedy, with the fish out of water kind of aspect, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How hard is it to? I mean, obviously, like I do like science fiction. I'm a big. I was just literally just talking to. Today is interview day, so I do a lot of interviews on a Wednesday, and I was just talking to another science fiction author before who and we were talking about Mass Effect, a video game series that we both have, which was made in Canada actually, and we were kind of just talking about science fiction and everything. And I'm also a very big fantasy fan, and writing fantasy and making it funny is hard. I don't know, you got Terry Pratchett, who's probably the king of it, and there's no one else who really comes very, very much close to him. But then in sci-fi, it's really hard. And then you have Hitchhiker's Guide, which is, up there. The same as Pratchett. I mean, it's a very similar kind of humor as Pratchett as well. So how much of a challenge is that? Or do you find it easy to kind of find those little bits of humor in there?
I do. I found it more of a natural flow of that, because the cool thing about science fiction is that you can make it all up, right? So you could make up like whatever kind of contraption you really would love to have. And then if you just allow, well, how could that even have been created? And, things start to pop in with that. Right. What's been helpful is my wife has helped a lot with the book as what it seems like a development editor type of standpoint of helping to ensure that those jokes still have that punchline and that they flow. Because yes, you can get lost in the science fiction of just something, a funny word, but that funny word still has to carry through to some kind of joke or some kind of humor, right?
Yeah.
But I find that if you start thinking in the terms of sci-fi, anything is possible, let's just go from the genre of funny, then that's how it flows out, at least for me.
Sure. Yeah, because we obviously, going back to the humor with the influences that you have. I mean, I would have watched a lot of those things. I still do, not even when I was a kid, but they were on TV quite a lot when I was a kid, and then growing up. But another one was Carry On as well. And I don't know if do you know Carry On?
I don't know that one.
No. It was kind of like the best way to describe it is, you ever see those old postcards from the 1960s that had like funny little drawings, and they're all like, very like voluptuous women and very scrawny men doing all kind of weird stuff, like riding donkeys. It's like that come to life, but in a movie. That's the kind of sense of humor. And a group of writers that I'm with, we're doing a Carry On meets H.P. Lovecraft anthology, which has just been it's so easy to get the jokes, but also it's a little bit kind of like you have to kind of remember to get the story in there as well.
Yeah.
Right. So how much of that is in your process of writing this book? How much of it has to be funny? Because as you said before, you would see it more as a comedy that is a sci-fi instead of a sci-fi that is a comedy. How much of that were you conscious of, where it's like, well, it has to be funny, but the story has to work as well?
That's a good question. The energy I had was funny. So because there's also a lot of dialogue, it just lended itself to that kind of flow of comedic, sarcastic, satire-based, and then the situations around it just seemed to develop from how the characters were interacting. So it is cool when you and when I reflect back on it, I let the characters guide how that story was going, and the characters already had a funny way of being, or the situations that they just happened to be in, and I think that allowed the flow to go in that direction.
So why don't you give us, the headlines of the book? Why should it be the next one on people's TBR list, and then what's the future of the series as well?
I had a thought and it went into a different direction. What I really like people to be able to take away from it is the fact of the laughter being, like Merton Burrell said, laughter is the best medicine. Charlie Chaplin said, a day without laughter is a day wasted. I want people to be able to have that opportunity to take a break and laugh. And in that laughter, be able to connect back to that childhood state and that silliness, and just allow themselves to escape. The book is really a fun adventure. And what I've heard people saying from all age ranges is people who've never looked at sci-fi, just enjoyed it for the comedy and the silliness and the escape. And it's really a story of a fun, adventurous space alien named Serbinand that just is, out to have fun. And he's got a crazy ship named Gottfried, and they're best friends. And on Earth, there's a teenager. His name is Jim, and he's got a budgie that's his best friend that he actually talks to. And in the audiobook, the budgie sings all its lines, which is awesome. And what happens is Serbinand and Jim switch bodies. And it's all the craziness of them needing to understand those situations, even to the point of the author needing to make an appearance into the story to help things along a little bit. So it's just this wacky, anything kind of goes adventure. The author pops in every so often. The characters are, have come to life, and they're still in the story, and they're still interacting and figuring things out. So it's just escape. It's 4 hours and 20 minutes of just on the audiobook of just like a comedy skit. And the book is a quick read. That I see people telling me they do it in a day, because it's just a fun escape.
And you can get it on anywhere that sells books, basically.
I like that. Right now it's on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible.
Excellent.
And I'm sure that will be expanded at some point.
Great stuff. So before we finish up, where can everyone who's listening, where's the best place to reach out to you if they've read your book and they want to give you a comment, or they want to find out more about FIT? How would they get in touch with you? And obviously your website is just underneath your name there, Serbinand.com, but where else can we find you?
Yeah, Serbinand.com has all the links, all the connections, even links to other books that I've enjoyed or friends of mine. On social media, under Jeffrey Kippel, that's JEFFREYKIPPEL. I'm pretty under that name. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and I post different videos and updates. Book 2 is underway, and that is starting to gain some momentum on what I'm doing with that. And rethinkFIT is rethinkFIT.social. And people can get connected if people want to empower others through retreats and events or speaking, or has a product or innovation that they want the world to know. They can connect right there, and we'll be able to guide them and help them through on their journey.
Good stuff. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining me and giving me some of your time today, and best luck with the book and for book 2 as well.
Thank you so much again for having me, David. Thank you.
And everyone at home, thanks for staying till the end.